Welcome to Season 6 of the Valley of Outlaws podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Seb Inglis-Jones, the co-founder of Maeving, the UK's largest electric motorbike company. This episode, we discuss the entrepreneurial journey and what it takes to be successful in this space. Whatever you want, no worries at all. Righty. Seb, you're Outlaw number 36, Season 6 of the Valley of Outlaws podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Absolute pleasure.
Really, really looking forward to this one. I always start the podcast with the same question, just to allow you to, I guess, explain yourself to the audience, which is, in your own words, tell me who you are, what you do, and why do you do what you do?
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Seb Inglis-Jones. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Maeving. We are a British electric motorcycle manufacturer based in Coventry, making our bikes in Coventry, exporting around the world now. And why do I do what I do? I think it started off with a desire to combat climate change. And then over time, it's morphed into, I guess, just a passion for making motorbikes, which I absolutely love. And, you know, the idea of getting as many people as possible onto electric transport.
Mm-hmm. Was it a clear path where you thought you were always going to go into kind of creating a motorbike or the sustainability side of it?
No, not at all. No, I think the thing that was clear pretty much from university, or maybe a little bit, no, maybe from uni, was that I wanted to start my own business. I think just some people are the kind of people who are better suited to the corporate world, maybe more risk averse, and then some people, they just can't imagine a world where they are in that kind of structure and kind of relish the opportunity of doing something themselves, doing something creative. So I think I always wanted that, and I wasn't daunted by that. But no, starting a kind of automotive manufacturing business, hell no. That's even seems nuts to me now. So yeah, uni kind of decided I want to start a business, and then it's all unfurled step by step. Really,
and at school, what kind of, I guess, were your passions as well? What were the things, maybe when you were younger, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Yeah, nothing at all. So I was almost expelled from my prep school.
Okay.
And was I remember this moment actually where a teacher just suddenly like shouted at me, and I'd been chewing an ink cartridge and it burst all over my face. And I was just like, I think that was the kind of student I was when I was like 10, really up until about 14, when a few teachers started paying attention to me. And so didn't really think about career or anything for a long time. I got an art scholarship to secondary school. I was an artist, thought I'd be in that kind of creative world, I guess. Slightly fell out of love with it. And at that time had a really passionate English teacher who'd sort of, I guess, paid attention to the fact that I was quite good at creative writing. I was quite observant when it came to, text and that kind of thing. So I kind of slowly got really into English, and then studied English and philosophy at university. So it was at no point on that did I think about career. Mm-hmm. I mean, I definitely had some good steering from people in my family and kind of mentors who said it's really important that you do some stuff for your CV, even when you're young. So I did like a mini pupillage in a law firm. I did a whole load of kind of stuff, CV stuff, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. Uh-huh. And I think it was only when I was at uni that I started thinking about, what a career might look like.
When you were then, like, I guess, leaving school, not knowing that, was there like an anticipation, excitement to go and just see what the world brings to you, or like were you a little bit nervous about the unknown of it?
I think I was in my academic stage. I think because I came to like, if you're someone who's always been just mucking around at school and you've not really given a shit about you just don't really care. It was only when I was about 14 that I started caring about stuff. I started realizing that I quite enjoyed studying certain subjects. Obviously you do GCSEs, you start getting rid of all the subjects you hate, and you kind of specialize. And I really, then I started writing poetry, and I started really like getting into English. And so I think kind of 16, 17, 18, 19, this was my sort of Renaissance period where I was thinking of myself as like a budding writer. And I remember in like first year of uni, I'd be like reading books in a coffee shop with, it was that kind of vibe. So career was like a million miles in the future.
And what about, I guess you said you had a good relationship with your parents. Like, did they guide? I remember when I was at school, you look at the breakdown of the people in your years and their parents, 30% of them are like 30% are a lawyer, 30% are in finance. Yeah. Like, did your parents have an idea of what they wanted you to do, or a guidance? Like, were they quite free?
I would say that's the best thing that my parents did for me, was to not genuinely not be prescriptive, or no blackmail in terms of what they wanted from me. Maybe because I was so badly behaved at school, the bar was really low. And I remember I was coming home from another detention from my school in Dulwich in London when I was younger, and I got pulled. Sort of basically, my parents like pulled over in the car on the way home and ambushed me, and were like, "I don't give a damn what it is that you do with your life, but just try. You've just got to try."
Okay.
And so it made quite an impression on me. I think all that they wanted from me, apart from being happy and all that, was that I tried at something and that I found a passion. They didn't really mind whether that was art, law, whatever it might be, but they never tried to funnel me into a traditional, job or never really had any strong idea. They had guidance as to what would be a good.
What did they do?
Dad was a lawyer.
Okay.
My dad's 90, so this is like a generation of people who are in the same job for like 55 years kind of thing. He's retired now, just. And my mum was an interior designer, and then she was looking after kids.
Yeah.
And then went back to uni actually to study and do design handbags and accessories, which is quite cool. At the age of like 60.
Was that quite inspiring for you? To see her go back to study.
I'm sad to say that retrospectively, I think that's really cool that she did that. And I think well done her. I think going to uni at the age of 60 and being surrounded by a load of like cool 17-year-old, 21-year-old art students. I mean, that is pretty cool. But I was maybe just in my own.
You didn't appreciate it.
I didn't. I'm sad to say that. But I can also I level the playing field and say I wasn't that inspired by Dad's long career in law either. So there we go. But I really appreciated the support to find my passion. I think that's pretty cool. And certainly from the kind of background I've come from, there's a lot of people being pushed into traditional careers, and my dad's also like he was 10 years old when World War II ended. I mean, it's a very risk averse generation. So for him, the idea of quitting the corporate job that I ended up having and starting my own business was complete anathema. But always a lot of support.
Let's go into that. Let's go to like the uni and then going into the corporate world, because I read that and then you left that. It seemed like that was that part of the plan to go and get corporate experience after university?
Yeah, it was. It's slightly unusual. I think most people do what they do is they kind of find a job that they love, and then if they're an entrepreneur, they have an idea and they kind of build it up, and then they jump ship because of it.
Yeah.
Whereas my co-founder and I met at uni and were like, right, we want to start a business together. I don't want to do it straight out of uni. Partly to build up some skills and experience and become someone who was capable of starting a business. I think partly also like a bit of a safety net, maybe. I mean, this is actually not something I've ever said. But probably a bit of a like, let's like prove to ourselves and our CV and the world that we can do something in the corporate world, so that you're sort of leaving on your terms.
Yeah, I understand that.
Maybe something like that.
There's two parts to that I understand. The first part is like a validation to also, if you're going to get investment, that you want people to see that you've actually done something
That's
legitimate.
very true. Yeah. Do you know what? There's a panoply of reasons. That's a very good one. Yeah. You want to, there's got to be some credentials. It's quite unnerving. I actually, straight out of uni, I went into a tech startup and I was hired as the marketing director, which is basically my titles just went downhill from there. But I remember sitting at a board table and an investor, quite rightly, I mean, I was annoyed at the time, being like, sorry, who's this guy? What are his credentials? Like a marketing director, he's sort of fresh out of uni. And so actually I did a couple of sort of startup roles, and then I went into the corporate world and got into one of these sort of, training leader schemes at a big consumer goods company.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting because there's another element to it of like this lineage of the journey everybody takes. Like the journey you go on makes you the person you need to be to achieve what you want to achieve as well. And in some ways, going to do that corporate job is part of that thing where you're learning the skills, learning the way you need to actually act and interact with people and actually think before you're capable of
definitely
leading.
And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head really there, because that's really all it is, I'd say. I don't think I actually learn any. I think to this day I have zero hard skills.
Okay.
Not that many soft skills. But the thing that you do learn is just how to conduct yourself with people of a certain seniority and how to interact with, agencies and partners and that builds up your confidence. I think just interacting with people of different levels.
And what was it about starting a business that was kind of so captivating for you at university, which was like, we know we're going to do this? Was it kind of the freedom of being in control, or was it?
Yeah, I think it's that. Look, I think to some extent, when you think about entrepreneurs and the temperament, it's it's better to start with what you're lacking or what you don't have. And by that, I mean like fear, like I think most people, if you ask them, in theory, would you like to start your own business and be the captain of your own ship and all that, have complete creative control? They would say yes. The reason that most people don't is because they're sensible.
Yeah.
And they have some sense of the risk involved, the statistics. And so I think it's always worth premising any consideration as to like why you started a business as to just like the faculties that you were lacking, like the fear, the trepidation, so there's a lot of that, just being someone who is happy to step into the unknown and fail. Realistically, most people fail.
Yeah.
And you just be almost just like, what was it? There was someone who was asked, what do you think is the most important thing for a founder CEO to have? And they said, the ability to forget, basically, a bad memory, just so that you go through all of this trauma and you just forget and you keep going. Anyway, sorry. Back to the question. I think for me, creative control was something I was really interested in.
Yeah,
Not control, but just the idea of like building something from scratch, feeling, the creative element, really. You're building this artifact. You're kind of making up the rules. It's just that's always seemed really appealing to me. I think it's definitely not. It wasn't a sort of power thing or a money thing. I think it was the creative challenge and the idea that if you could build a business and it works out, then that's just cool. That you basically created a world for yourself that's exactly what you want to do in theory.
Yes.
Obviously, you're very idealistic at that stage. You don't think about all of the pain and the struggles and the fact that it probably won't be the business that you'd originally thought of and all that stuff.
But did you have a fear of failure before that? It was a question I was going to ask later, but I want to go into because we talked about it now. It's I think it's such a big thing, especially for young people. They're scared of failing. Like, is that something you never had at all?
No, and I think that a lot of that is down to parents not putting pressure on you to be a certain thing. I think a lot of the time fear of failure comes from there being this archetype of what you should be.
Yes.
And if you fall short of that, which you invariably will, because not everyone should be a whatever it is that parents want them to be. And so I think I believe, I have no idea whether it's true, that a lot of that fear of failure is driven by the wrong expectations being set in the first place.
Yes, I agree with that.
If success is measured by happiness, fulfillment, engagement, all that kind of stuff, then it's easier to not fail because it's kind of on your terms. But no, in a conventional sense, no, I never really had that fear.
Did you get it more once the business started to grow? I've spoken to a few people who say, no, I didn't have it before. And then once the business actually meant something, I had a greater, not a fear of failure, but I felt like a greater responsibility that is now had to work because it became something.
Yeah, so that is true, but I wouldn't think of it in terms of failure. I'm quite a stoic person with a capital S. Like I am the sort of person that if something smashes, I'm just like, oh well.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Amnesia. Sorry, that was the word I was thinking of earlier. The ability to forget. In some words, I have a bad memory and I'm quite stoic, and that means that those almost go hand in hand with having less fear, I suppose.
Interesting.
But no, you definitely a sense of responsibility. I think that and resilience as well, because the more you go through it, the more you're determined to make it work. And I think it's more of a determination to make it work. Obviously, when the team grows and you feel like you're suddenly, there are a lot of people who are not depending on you. I think that's the wrong word because they can get other jobs. But there's a lot of belief in the product, and you start doing well, and people are like, oh, we can really make this work, and the investors get excited. And so there's definitely a sense of responsibility that keeps you going in the tough times. But I would say not for me, fear. I think my co-founder would absolutely say fear.
Okay.
How
different are you two personality-wise?
I think we're very different, and I think that's important in a co-founder basis. So I'm positive, happy-go-lucky, creative, sort of forward-thinking. I'm very much a kind of on-the-ground person. So if you need to go and like set something up physically, negotiate a lease, speak to someone, that's me.
Yeah.
And my co-founder is like detail orientated, finance in the spreadsheet, cares about the detail, operationally focused.
Okay.
So naturally I kind of veer more towards like marketing, sales, product vision, that kind of stuff. PR, whatever it might be. And he's much more kind of, operations, finance. The business would 100% fail if it wasn't for his management of it and his sort of detailed management of it. But it's also important to have that kind of
Yeah.
like people side and soft skills element.
100%. And I think I read in one of your like interviews, it was you said that you two hit it off at uni and you were able to solve problems together. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so we met he was doing PPE, I was doing philosophy and English, and we met in a philosophy tutorial that was really badly run. It was a great ethics tutorial. It should have been like, the stuff that dreams are made of at uni, where you're debating the great topics of life, and it wasn't, because sadly the sort of adjudicate, the what are they called, the tutor, the adjudicator of these sessions had like a chronic fear of people, and so it was terrible. She was clearly like a really talented research student, who was then told she needed to do these seminars, these tutorials, and was terrified by it.
Wow.
And so we come there expecting to really engage with these sessions and, armed with our arguments and our thoughts, and it just didn't really happen. So we decided that we would basically carry on the tutorials at the pub and just like have a good old chat about them. And so our friendship was formed in debating, and we were very respectfully, even though we had different views, we were very sort of respectful of each other's views. We really valued the thought process. We were very happy to argue essentially for like 4 hours and still be mates and it not be personal. And that's a really important quality, 7.5 years later, working together, 15 years later, whatever it might be, the ability to disagree agreeably, as if you listen to the rest of politics, is really important. And then also, I suppose, complete trust of each other's strengths and weaknesses. So we were just talking about, what we both bring to the table. And I have complete trust in what he brings to the table. And I think he has complete trust in what I bring to the table. And we between us make one semi-functional CEO, looking at different sides of the business. So I think, trust, ability to debate with each other, to disagree, to, muddle through, really, really important.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't start a business with a friend or a partner, really.
Okay, this is very interesting. This is really interesting because my sister is adamant that you never go into business with family and friends.
She's totally right.
I get it, but I also think that there's an element of, if you know each other to a certain level as well, you also know, as you said, the strengths and weaknesses. You can push someone a bit further than it's someone else who doesn't know you.
Yes.
Maybe they haven't got you haven't got the connection with them to really get you going at your best speed.
Yes, so yes, that is true. So first of all, I think, look, just very simply, there's a great book called The Founder's Dilemma. It's a kind of statistical analysis of startups, what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And statistically, you are likely to fail if you start. I mean, generally, you're statistically likely to fail. But,
anyway,
you are more likely to fail if you start with a partner or a friend, because you mistake your kind of positive views about that other individual but basically you've got rose-tinted spectacles to their qualities and you've not seen them in a working context.
I get it.
So someone could be an amazingly, erudite, great speaker, great debater, but actually, they're rubbish in a work context. Some of the brightest people are more academic. They're not great practitioners in the workplace. And so actually statistically, the most startups that are the most likely to succeed are the ones where you've worked together for a long time in a particular industry, and then you decide that you're essentially going to lift that, do a similar business in the same sector with that person, because you've got this shared experience, this roadmap, what they're good at. But as you said, if you can test working together in some capacity, then you do have that sort of baseline, all of that trust, that that kind of love, which is really helpful in certain contexts, and you're much more able to be emotional supports for each other. I mean, that comes with all sorts of challenges for your relationship. It's a bit of a like marriage, and there are ways in which your friendship might suffer in that context. But yeah, there are definitely some positives there.
Yeah, it's still an endless debate in my household. It's interesting. I think what you just said is very, very interesting as well, in terms of, I think that you can probably be straighter with someone as well. Maybe sometimes when you've got a relationship, it's harder for you to be more critical in some ways, maybe that personal element to it.
Yeah, but I think you go through so many, we sort of started off, I mean, we decided that we would buy a flat together as almost like a test of our abilities, so we sort of, and in the early stages, we had to get used to our different working styles. We introduced a kind of timestamp thing to make sure we were doing the same amount of work. We went through various arguments and disagreements about how to spend, finances, about who was working. We've been through many
Yeah, understand.
ups and downs to get to a point where we trust that we're both on the same page in terms of
Yeah.
what we want from this. And then once you've sort of battled through that, we're a huge emotional support for each other. We'll be hugging and crying at moments. We'll be kind of cheering each other up when the other person's feeling down. So there's a lot of that stuff which is really good. But I think we've had to work
to get there
really hard to get that.
So it is a marriage, basically.
It is a marriage. We've been through our own internal, almost marriage counselling with each other. It's so. But I suppose when you come out the back of that, you've experienced something with someone that you'll never get from any other relationship. You've been through so much. We both were each other's best men.
Okay.
At each other's weddings. There'll be times when we're angry with each other, but there's so much shared experience now. And if we come off the back of Maeving and everything's gone really well, that will be an extraordinary thing to have done together, I suppose.
And do you think without meeting him or without having a co-founder, you would have still been an entrepreneur, or was doing it with someone else always part of that?
I think I would be a failed entrepreneur. I think it's so hard to imagine starting a business now with anyone other than Will, because we're so sort of joined at the hip in terms of the way that we work. I think I would have the business would have failed if it was just me. Sorry, any business that I had started, but I certainly wouldn't be able to do as complex a business as this. The business would have had to be the scope would have had to be way more manageable.
Okay.
I think, there's no chance I would be doing sort of complex hardware business.
Yeah. No, understand. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so I know that sustainability was kind of the area you guys wanted to focus in. How did it lead to you finding kind of the electric motorbike space and?
Well, so the sustainability thing, I think I think when we thought to ourselves, what's it going to be like running a business? What in order to sort of increase the chances of success and to give us the best chance of just pushing through with it, because starting a business is hard. We thought, how can you make yourself more engaged with it? And and we thought that it would be so much better to start a business that was fighting against the thing that we most cared about, or engaging with the topic that we most cared about. We think climate change remains the biggest kind of challenge of our time. It goes through on an almost 5-year basis waves of kind of focus, but it's going to be a nightmare at some point. And I think that when the chips are down, knowing that we are in some small way contributing to that is really, really helpful. Kind of sets you just in the right direction from the off. Given that was our kind of guiding light, I suppose, neither of us have a technical bone in our body. So we were never going to be able to go into the, things like carbon sequestering, air travel, concrete production. These kind of areas are going to require decades of R&D from people a lot more intelligent than we are. So we always needed to find something or engage with something where kind of the technology was already there, and it was more about the application of it. It was more about the commercialization of it. That was our strength as a sort of marketer and a financier. And so actually in many ways, the electrification of travel is an obvious thing to look into. Electric cars have been around since 1908 or something like that. There's a roadmap for people creating electric vehicles. It's been done. Obviously, Tesla popping off at around about the point we were looking at the bike market. And so was naturally that was on our radar. And then a friend of mine, when I kind of quit my job and essentially announced that I was like, right, starting my own business, I'm looking for ideas, I'm committing to this journey. One of my close mates from school basically got in touch with me and said, I've actually just invested in a Kiwi mechanic out in China making electric motorbikes. Would you be interested in kind of, thinking about the UK and European arm of this business? And I was like, motorbikes, tick, electric, tick. Let's look into this market in greater detail. And the thing that really triggered or led to us going, right, this is it, let's begin researching this in a serious way, was when we discovered that actually China had the highest rates of electric adoption, and it was all down to two-wheel vehicles, like 80% electric adoption in urban areas, and it's all down to electric scooters. And we were really fascinated by this. Bear in mind, everyone talks about China now in terms of EVs, but no one was talking about China in like 2017,
of course,
at the time of the kind of Paris Climate Accord. People were, Norway had just gone to I think they were leading the fray. 50% new vehicles were electric, that kind of thing. But here was China with this massive rate of electric adoption. And in essence, it was because the Chinese Communist Party, in order to deal with the crap air quality in the big cities like Beijing and Shanghai, had essentially outlawed petrol vehicles. And so they had to go from kind of zero to hero with absolutely no charging infrastructure. And so the way they got around that was to essentially like hook up lead acid car batteries to motorcycle chassis. Fast forward 8 years and they've invented a whole new format of transport, which is like a vehicle, like a car or a bike, where you can charge it as easily as you would do a laptop or a phone with a battery in a standard socket in your flat or in a coffee shop. And we were like, that's amazing. Yeah. That's so simple. 80% of people live in cities. The average commute is like 7 miles. It's not 50 miles. Most people, most of the time, can get around on a 2-wheel vehicle and they can just charge the battery, once a week in their flat instead of worrying about charging infrastructure and all of the kind of range anxiety that comes from worrying about where you're going to refuel.
Fascinating, that actually. It's so interesting because it's such a, as you said, leaving your job and then going, right, I'm going to find something that opens up is such a kind of being in the right place at the right time with opportunities, isn't it? And it's
it is.
The courage to quit your job as well, though.
Yeah, so we should come back to that because it is quite an unconventional route, quitting a job to
not know what you're going to do.
To not know what you're going to do. That's very unusual. It's always, you jump ship in order,
you got the plan after.
You've got the plan. You've been working on it on the weekends. You feel right, now's the time, and that's not what we did at all. But just to put some numbers to this, in 2017, 2018, in the UK, there was 297, I think it was, electric motorbikes or scooters sold in total. Same year in China was like 22 million. Wow. So there had already been a revolution.
Yes.
And this is very much like, oh my goodness, that sounds amazing. Let's bring that over here and let's do it in a British way.
Interesting. And well, am I right in thinking before you started Maeving, you were the European arm of this other company?
So we started off by thinking about import. We thought we're thinking about essentially importing a product that was already made. And the journey that we went on was building up a business plan over the course of a year to import electric motorbikes from, this guy and this new thing, but ostensibly from the country that was nailing this technology. And then, long story short, it took us we basically did things the wrong way around. We built a business plan before we actually went out to China, met the business partners, saw the product, got to grips with the supply chain, and long story short, it didn't work out because essentially the quality of the product wasn't where we needed it to be. Wasn't suitable for the UK market, and so we eventually thought, right, if we want to do this, we're going to have to do it ourselves from scratch. We're going to have to start an automotive company. We're going to have to recruit engineers. We're going to have to build a product to our specifications that we think will work in the UK.
See, now that part's interesting because that's the part which should
it's a big
me go, okay, wow, now I've got to find people who know how to make a motorbike. Rather than saying, how do you get to that position and get into that mindset where you're going, right, we're going to build a company from scratch. We don't know how to build a motorbike. We don't even know what these people are going to do to make this work, but we know we want a product which is going to be high quality. How do you go to that? How do you move forward through that? Because that's terrifying to people.
Well, I think this is the kind of to some extent, the book that you will always find on any entrepreneur's bookshelf is The Lean Startup. And
God, I hope it's on my bookshelf. I don't think it is. I'm going to buy it for the next episode.
It's good. So, I won't sort of go into the many of the theories that are in it, but it kind of sets out this world in which instead of kind of writing a business plan and being like, this is what we want the product to be and this is where we're going to be in 10 years, you're accepting that invariably you're going to be pivoting.
Yes.
And the best thing to do is to set up a world in which you can learn quickly from your customers, whatever it might be, and pivot fast.
Yes.
And I suppose similarly, a lot of people don't start out thinking, I'm going to start an automotive company. And had I thought that's what we were going to do right at the beginning, I probably wouldn't have started. I'd be like, that's crazy. But every step along the way gave you bits of information and data that kind of led to you going, all right, I think we can do this, right? Yeah. So we start off by becoming fascinated with the market. The market signals were good. Loads of bikes selling over there. It's not in the UK. We think this is a really sensible way to go about travel. You know, we do some surveying. We speak to people. People go, yeah, that sounds amazing. We look at various designs. We get an understanding as to the bike market in the UK and Europe. What do people like? What do they not like? What are the you sort of build up a sense of the market. You get really excited. You build up a sense of kind of anticipation, and you're like, oh, the opportunity, and you're getting ready with this import business. It then doesn't work out, and then suddenly you're like, I've sunk a year into this. I know there's a market here. Yeah, I've now got my tail between my legs, but I've built up a lot of kind of emotional investment in this over the course of a year, 16 months. And then you start thinking, right, well, if we were to do it ourselves, who would we need? We spoke to an engineer friend of ours who did kind of robotics at Ocado. Yeah. Super bright guy. And he was like, oh, well, if you did want to create your own product, this is how you do it. You start with a concept and then you build a first prototype and then you kind of iterate and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, you're sort of edging closer to feeling like you could do it. And then, of course, you build the prototype and then you get investment. And so at no point on that journey, it was always just one foot in front of the other, I suppose, is my point. But there was a moment where we came back from China, as I said, tails between legs, thinking we've just wasted a year and 2 months of our life. And we came very close to giving up because we were exhausted. We spent all our money. It was pretty demoralizing. And, we took some time off and then kind of had a coffee and we're like, no, I think this opportunity is too good to miss. Yeah. So let's go in and let's go in like full hog.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
And to some extent, the advantage of not having any technical bones in our body meant that we knew from the first instance that we would have to rely on other people to do that. Of course. So it became about finding the right partner to build the prototype. It became about finding the right first hire. And
But it also means that you have to get up to speed quite quickly as well to know when they recommend you a decision that you kind of know what they're talking about in some ways. Do you know what I mean? Like they go, well, we think you should do it like this, or do you just trust completely?
Yeah. I think more or less in different sectors. You have to be an Elon Musk type person to start as a SpaceX. And you have to have a certain level of kind of engineering nous, technical understanding to engage with the technical people in that team. Otherwise, they would run rings around you. Maybe a little bit less so in our world. It's not wizardry in the same world that it is without quantum computing or whatever it might be. There are some, I think, environments where you would have to have done some sort of science degree or engineering degree in order to just even speak the language. But I think we've always approached it from more of a kind of consumer lens.
Of course.
So we understanding the product, understanding the customers, and not getting the technical process that takes you to a product that caters for those customers, but knowing enough about it to feel comfortable in the decisions we make.
Yeah, fair. And going to the UK kind of manufacturers as well, was it easy to convince them to start making electric motorbikes rather than your traditional petrol or diesel?
No, because we actually we've done it all ourselves. So so the way that we did it essentially was we having done our market research and understanding roughly what sort of product we felt we needed to make, we then drew up a briefing document, which essentially had the specs of the product we wanted to make, a whole load of initial sort of 2D designs of what we thought it should look like and why. Yes. The kind of heritage style, the retro piece that really lent into British motorcycle styling. Yeah. We'd sort of spec'd out a powertrain, so we knew roughly what cells we wanted to use, what the power was going to be, and it was like it was a brief to make a prototype, and we approached various kind of industrial design companies, motorcycle designers, and said, how much would you charge us to build this prototype? Yeah. And big old process, really fun process to build that prototype. Then it was about using that to attract investment and to attract our first hires. And the real coup for the business was when we made our first hire, which was a guy called Graham Gilbert, who was the head of product at Triumph, senior product lead in the country, really, from the best motorcycle brand as far as we're concerned. And he gave us the credibility to bring on a kind of team. He brought over some great guys from Triumph. We sort of then had this brilliant fledgling product team, and we design every component. We then work with individual suppliers to manufacture all the components, and then we assemble it in our own factory. So we set up that whole operation, ourselves.
Wow.
We weren't relying on kind of contract manufacturing or third parties.
No, okay. And once you got your prototype, how easy was it for you to find like investors and the right investors as well? Were you kind of at a point where you were like, we're going to take anyone, or we need to have the right people behind us to be part of this team? Because I think that's quite important, having the right investor who's...
Yes, it is. It really is. And we're really lucky. We have amazing investors and we have really good relationships with them. And that's sort of the kind of nasty VC stereotype we've just not encountered.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's in part because we're doing an all right job, or whether we just have got incredible investors. I think it's the latter. We're often told that our board and our cap table is really, really strong.
Okay.
But we started our fundraise 2 months before COVID.
Yes.
And we thought we were hot shit. We got sort of a decent number of offers on the table, and then COVID hit, and then everything went off the table. The whole thing looked like it was going to collapse again. Nightmare. And then we were quite lucky, because when everyone realized that we weren't all going to die and it was going to be okay, and investors were starting to think about which businesses were going to do all right out of COVID, individual transport that gets people off busy trains, it was e-bikes were going through the roof. And so we ended, in some ways that probably helped the fundraise in the end, but it just took it was quite protracted, because it had this 3-4 month COVID interlude that was soul destroying for people with no money.
Well,
people funding themselves with like tutoring and DJ rental and stuff like that. So that was an interesting period.
And it's amazing. Lots of kind of like hurdles and stuff you've had to get over. And I think at the time you go, bloody hell, something else. And then once everything settles, it kind of builds itself up again, doesn't it? And it's a patience game in some way.
Although I think I wasn't ready for how every year seems to be harder. I think I'm longing for that moment where we get to some sort of stasis, where everything's just chugging along. But maybe that's not the case. I mean, I heard recently from someone who said, the job of an entrepreneur, of a founder, is really just to solve problems. Yeah. And if you're not solving problems, then you've probably got your head in the sand, or there's a problem about to come.
Yep.
But it does feel like we've had more than our fair share of global catastrophes. We had COVID, we had Russia invade Ukraine just as we launched our first product. We had all of the kind of supply crisis that came off the back of that, and COVID, energy crisis, recession. And it's just been kind of one quite challenging thing after another. Tariffs most recently. So it does make you stronger, but I'm kind of longing for it to come to an end and us to reach some sort of golden period where people are just like, great, let's buy motorbikes, and we're selling billions. Yeah,
it's going to happen. Can I ask about your target market as well? Were you targeting people who are already big motorbikers, or are you like attracting also people who've never really been on the motorbike before? Maybe what was your kind of position there? Because you've got, for example, and this is the car world, but you've got like the Clarkson, May, Hammond lot from Top Gear who. We like our petrol cars, and I feel like there probably is the same there of your Harley crew and your Triumph crew, and we like our is that a kind of a cohort of people you're breaking into, or are you kind of targeting a completely different?
It's very split. So the customer that I think we always wanted to attract, and now we are really attracting, I mean about 60% of business this year, is the person who's never ridden, has never thought about a petrol motorbike, has no affiliation with the world of petrol, and who tries our bikes or sees a bike and goes, that is such a better way of getting around a town than shoved in someone's armpit on a tube, or whatever it might be, or sitting in a traffic in a car, and then tries biking for the first time, loves it, becomes a massive evangelist, and is like, this is the best. That's the ideal situation, and then you're growing the category, you're appealing to the next generation of riders. I think we always thought there was going to be a bit of friction with the passionate petrol heads who are like, no noise, no vibration, no engine. I can't wrap my head around that. And in many ways, the surprise when we first launched was that the majority of our first customers and our early adopters were traditional bikers who had like 5 motorbikes, and saw our products as a kind of great, low maintenance, everyday run around, hopefully beautiful, bike, and were willing to give electric a try. Like, actually, that's really good for this context, urban riding, everyday riding, that kind of thing, lightweight, maneuverable, automatic, all those things that make something quite good for, urban commuting. And so that, in many ways, that was a surprise. And then over time, it's just shifted more and more towards the kind of the new rider who's getting into it for the first time. And as I said, that's the really interesting side of the market, because that's the future. It's not the future, but that's showing that you're growing the category, and that's showing 100%. That you can open up the category to many more people than just the average motorcycle registrations per year kind of sphere.
Yeah. What's the kind of the max distance you can go? I know you can go. It's 45 miles an hour max speed.
No, 70 miles per hour max speed.
Okay, wow.
And 80 miles. So to put that into context, the average UK commute is, I think, 6.7 miles. Yes. So most of our customers are doing a week's worth of commuting, and then they're charging their bike, on a Friday night or something on the weekend. I'd say the bikes are very much geared towards urban riding. That's where they make the most sense. But you can obviously spend a little bit of time on a motorway or or an A road if you need to. And so that our first bike, by the way, did have a top speed of 45.
Yeah, I think that's where I read that from. So then I know the latest one got 70.
Yeah, so that one's kind of like almost was like a equivalent to like a moped that you ride around town, and then this one's more of a kind of 125, 200 cc kind of bike, a little bit more capable.
Is the distance of the batteries something? I know you're targeting to be like an urban bike thing, but are you hoping that batteries improve so much that you can also just become the touring bike company as well, which is electric?
Yeah. So I mean, we want to make bikes that cater for every single use case. I think we feel quite strongly that you can't shoehorn electric into everything. There are things it is good at, and there are things it's not, and it's silly trying to tell customers that everything should be electric.
Of course.
And so for us, the sweet spot at the moment for electric is bikes that are lower capacity, such that you can have a small enough battery that you can take it out and charge it at a standard socket. And what doesn't make so much sense at the moment is like a big, heavy recreational electric bike where you can go a bit faster, but you have to plug in. Yeah. And then because you're going to get much less range out of a smaller battery in a bike than you would do a car, you're going to get that range anxiety way faster. Yeah, okay. So yes, solid state, charging, there are all sorts of things that will make recreational riding make sense in years to come. But for now, we think we're in the right side of the market. Yeah, nice. And we're very much kind of technology led. So we'll only do that at the point at which it makes sense. Of course. And last motorbike question. The silence. This is the thing. So it's awesome. I love it. But is there a safety thing? Because, in an urban environment, we see London, people don't look to cross the streets. Something comes up if it's coming up to a point at 30, 40, fine. If it's silent, is it like, how do you guys position yourself that? Because I've seen electric cars now have the fake motor engine. So it's like, look, I have I think if you look through history, new technologies are always faced with a kind of, there's always a bit of friction in terms of what are the risks associated with this. So for example, when the first horse and carts, were allowed on urban roads, people were thinking, oh my goodness, people are going to be knocked over by horses. When the first automobiles were put on the same roads as horses and carts, they used to have these absurd rules where if you came across a horse and cart, you'd have to pull over, weren't allowed to go more than 20 miles. Yeah. And we wouldn't want to return to that world. It's better that we can go faster. And of course, there's risk associated with it. But you do evolve. Yeah. And similarly, if you go to a country where there's mass electric adoption, so let's just take China, let's take Shanghai. Shanghai, everyone's on electric motorbikes and scooters. Okay. And you'll be at a traffic lights, it'll go green, complete silence, there's like 20,000 bikes just quietly glide off into the future. Okay. And it's really odd. It's disconcerting because it's so peaceful. There's you don't smell all the fumes. It's not like the Euston Road where you feel like you're losing years off your life when you just cross the road, or you're on a bicycle, as I am a lot of the time, cycling around. Nightmare, so there's all these benefits that come in, particularly in urban areas, for quiet. If you live in the countryside, you're not hearing like Ducatis whiz by and people rev their way around your A roads. And the cost of that is being a little bit more cognizant when you cross the road. It's understanding you can no longer rely on a revving engine as your cue that there is something risky. You can't just be on your phone as you cross the road. We just, for me, I just think we just have to navigate that transition. But in Shanghai, people look before they cross the road, and people enjoy the quietness, the cleanliness.
I realised when I asked the question the irony in it, because I'm a big advocate for reducing noise pollution, and then I was at one point making an argument that noise pollution saves, but actually,
but it's the number one thing that people who, actually, quite frankly, the people who just have a bee in their bonnet about electric, and that's what the thing they focus on.
Yeah.
But when I was on the Radio 4, what's it called, Gap Finders podcast with Winifred Robinson, and they had their people phone
asking
in,
questions,
and it was John from Barnsley. John, there's someone who rang in and said, "I'm blind. It's risky for me crossing the roads. I'm worried about electric." And Winifred was like, "What are you going to do about that?" And I was thinking, I don't know. I hands up, I've not been thinking about the blind community. And there are always going to be people who, there'll be things that have to evolve in order to cater for the safety element.
No,
of
course.
But I do think it's a better world where there's no emissions, no noise.
Completely.
You're not being woken up at 5 a.m. by a Deliveroo rider, revving their engine, all that kind of stuff. So there's just pros and cons.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Right, let's go on to the more personal stuff, mindset. We've already talked about fear of failure, that was that part, but how important is it for you now as a business founder leader to have the right people around you to push you further, to rely on? We talked about that with Will, but again, your team, like when you're hiring, how selective and careful are you picking the right people to come into you, and also to have the right people speaking to you and to kind of like advise you and motivate you?
It's the biggest cliche, isn't it? People is the most important thing in any business. And it's not only about surrounding yourself with the best caliber people, it's also about making sure that if you come across people who are not good, that you sort of distance yourself from them as soon as possible, because the wrong people can be as damaging as the good people can be positive. So really important. And I think we've been very lucky because we spent this kind of year learning some hard lessons about product quality. We took this decision to have a hiring policy that's very different from a lot of startups where you rely on young, energetic people with a lot of ambition. Our company is full of highly experienced engineers. And so the average age in our company is higher than you would expect from a company at our stage. The level of experience, the average level of experience is way higher than you would expect. So we, right from the start, have been lucky to surround ourselves with amazing investors, amazingly experienced people. And I think that's the reason that we're here today versus, other peers and competitors that fell at the first hurdle because they just didn't have that kind of quality.
Of course.
Crucial.
Do you have a fear of the next generation not being technically good enough to manufacture your products? Because the older generation, you've got a very old workforce who are able to help. Like, are you also training young people to come and do it as well as their thought to us? Because the young people now, we have a very different mindset of what a career is, and actually and it's probably a lot less hands-on.
It's a good question. So there's so many things that come to mind. First of all, no, we are not doing a lot of training up at the moment. I think young companies, it's just too fast paced, and everyone's got too much work, of course, to be honest. So we're not yet at a stage where we have a kind of training program
kind of thing.
No, I see lots of talented young engineers still, coming into the hopper. Yeah. And we're certainly not feeling a kind of lack of, good engineers. Yeah. I definitely am concerned about other countries championing manufacturing and EV technology to the detriment of, we're relatively, it's a pretty small industry over here, and we are not the global leaders when it comes to battery cell technology, all that kind of stuff. So I worry more about the skills gap in terms of what we are and are not good of in this country. Yeah. It's also worth saying, the current AI thing is weirdly that it's the middle class, it's the white collar roles that are being knocked out, and to some extent engineering now and mechanics and physical operatives are not threatened or not as threatened. And so I don't know, maybe there will be more people who will go, actually, in order to be risk averse, I'm going to go into the sciences, and I'm going to become an engineer. I'm going to go that route because it's less replicable. It's not the current AI threat.
100%. I saw something which a guy said the safest job you could do is become a plumber.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so, and particularly a plumber, not just, fascinating.
Yeah. Do you think that again, for the back, okay, maybe not the building, but the back house and AI has effects for you guys? Like, is it something which you're looking at as well to move forward? It's kind of a bit off the path here, but I'm quite interested in your thoughts on AI with this, actually.
I think that any business leader who is not 100% assuming that being an AI expert and thinking about how to integrate AI at every step is going to really suffer.
Okay.
And, I just think the working world is going to be vastly different in 1 year, in 3 years, in 5 years.
Yeah.
And the speed of change is nuts. I'm now talking to LLMs, conversationally, for everything from strategic insights on my own business that they seem to know better than I do myself to third-party service providers in the US, to copywriting, to whatever it might be, and that's just ChatGPT. That's not even that's before we've even got to integration of large action models that can actually do stuff on your behalf. And so
it's interesting. I spoke to someone who knows people working in the kind of consulting space, like Deloitte, and it's like Deloitte are charging you for their staff to use ChatGPT to deliver them a product. But it's like, you can just do it yourself.
No, but it's interesting. But becoming a good prompter and getting the most out of it. I don't think that ultimately these things are necessarily going to just replace all those people. It's just that you need to be able to then use them well to quadruple, triple, 10 times your output. The expectation of what you can get in a very short space of time is now changed.
Yeah, fair. Leadership, what does it mean to you? How do you become a good leader? What lessons have you learned about leadership along the way?
I'm just going to sort of say a whole bunch of random things. But I wish I could say the number one thing. Vision. You ultimately are not, the most important thing. And I'm talking about leadership really here in a founder capacity. Obviously, leadership means something very different if you're a sergeant taking people over the front line. You need to, maybe it's the same thing. Maybe you need people to have complete trust in you. I think you need to know that you're going to be able to inspire people to quit their jobs and come and join you when you have absolutely zero credentials. And that is about being able to convince people that the vision that you have for the future and the product is the right vision. And so your ability to persuade people, to energize people, to motivate them is absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
And then, there's the whole kind of management piece, which is so kind of complex. How do you ensure that people feel like they have autonomy, that they are contributing to that vision, that you create a kind of energizing workplace, that you set a culture that people want to be a part of, all of that. I mean, that's so sort of complex. But I think the number one thing is vision, is just being able to convince people to follow you almost no matter what, because it's going to be flipping tough. You're probably not going to be able to pay them anywhere close to what they could get from other jobs. There are going to be moments when it seems like the business is up the spout, and the only thing that's going to carry you through that is going to be if they have a kind of resolute belief in your vision.
Yes.
And they've then become invested in it themselves as well.
Okay. That's really interesting. Imposter syndrome. Have you ever suffered from it? Has it ever come to play and you're going, Christ, I don't know, maybe in front of investors or maybe you're...
Yeah. All the time. I remember having a chat with when I used to be, believe it or not, so scared of presenting. When I was in Reckitt Benckiser, a big corporate, consumer goods company that makes Strepsils, Durex, Finish, Vanish, all the stuff that you see on the shelves at supermarkets. And I used to be so nervous presenting to the kind of C-suite that I would be like retching in the loo. I'd be like so. And I remember saying to my older brother, he's a hedge fund manager, but he used to be in kind of corporate investing world. I said to him, when does this when do you lose the fear? Like, when do you go from being someone who knows nothing to like having enough knowledge that you just feel confident? And he said, no. No one ever stops winging it. You just suddenly realize that everyone's winging it, and so you just get more comfortable with it. You get more comfortable with walking into a room and going, I don't really know the answer to this, but like I'm I'm comfortable enough to have a conversation about it and to admit what I don't know and to, put some weight behind the things that I feel I do know.
Yes.
And, where my opinions are valid.
Yeah.
So I think imposter syndrome morphs into something which is more like a kind of confident humility, where you're like, you just get comfortable with not knowing.
Yeah, not being the expert you think you
Not
need
being
to
the
be.
expert. And I will often start calls with people, partners that we're looking to work with, and I'll say, I know nothing about this, just treat me as an idiot. And developing that confidence to be like, I'm the least knowledgeable person in my call. So I'll often be on calls that are technical calls between our team who are very experienced and third parties. And I'll make it very clear from the outset, I don't have a clue what people are talking about here. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And yeah. So do you know what I mean? So I think imposter syndrome was how I would describe how I felt in the corporate world. And now I've just got comfortable with not knowing anything. And
but that's a sign of a good leader. You surround yourself with people who know more, and you don't pretend like you do know the most.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. But I suppose you've got to be a good operator in some way, don't you? I suppose because the kind of quid pro quo of that is that you've got to have enough confidence or acumen or nous or skill or whatever to sort of know what's right and wrong and what's bullshit and what's good advice and all that, and sort of navigate through it.
Yeah.
So I'm not sort of, I think, and that's partly why I wanted to go in the corporate world and develop some sort of skills, was to build up my confidence and compass.
Mm-hmm. And did you have any self-limiting beliefs about yourself you had to overcome before stepping into it?
No, I think I've developed. I think I'm now more aware of my limits. So I think I had completely bottomless confidence as I stepped into the business, and I've now really seen what I'm not good at. Through the and this is kind of where my relationship with my co-founder comes in. We've really been exposed to our weaknesses, and we're so reliant on each other. We know what we're good at, what we're bad at, and so I really can say with utter confidence that without him, I wouldn't want to do this. We are reliant on each other, and so I'm not. I don't kid myself that I'm a kind of like Steve Jobs. I'm not at all. As I said at the beginning, I'm 50% of a all right CEO.
Okay. I love that. It's interesting because it reminds me. Do you know Tom Elliott? Also, Radley started Pizza Pilgrims. His brother?
I know the story very well,
okay,
and I was there eating their pizza when they were based in Farringdon.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. Out the back of their truck when they just come back from their trip.
Epic. So he was saying that most entrepreneurs, the biggest problem is they get in the way of themselves, thinking that because they're the founder and the starter, they have to solve all the problem. And he said the biggest thing is learning that you don't have to solve them. You can get someone in to solve your problems as well.
So yes, and that's interesting hearing that, because I think that I felt that from an early.
Okay.
I don't have this kind of like unbending desire to be the leader of the the captain of the ship. If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people like that. Some people are kind of like maniacal.
Yes.
And whereas I really like, I think it was the founder of Netflix who said, when he was asked the question, what would your dream board meeting look like? And he was like, basically one in which I don't open my mouth. In which basically all the amazing team that I've assembled does everything and is able to, I've assembled a team who has enabled me to kind of feel confident in, to sort of step back.
Wow.
And so I wholeheartedly buy into that, again, because our product is quite technical and we've had to get in these engineers, we've had to rely on the expertise of other people and have to get comfortable with, I don't know how to set up a production line. I don't know how to select materials. I don't know how to build components and or service bikes, and all of this. Yeah. Whereas some people's companies, there's much more of a temptation to want to own a bigger slice of it for a longer period of time in terms of thought leadership and decision making, because they can. Yeah. But I think in a more technical business, you have to rely on the.
Yeah, of course. What does fulfillment mean to you?
For myself.
Yeah.
There's the home side, love, family, all that, and increasingly I think the more complex our business has become and the more demanding, the more I appreciate the simple things in life now. And, now I probably have more of a craving for just like a nice quiet life with my wife than I've ever had before. I probably used to think, I'm going to conquer the world and do this, that, and the other. So there's definitely a bit of that. There's definitely a bit of just surfing every day, like
Nice.
physical engagement. I feel massively under natured, and I feel like I'm turning into a blob. I don't like that. And then there's all the stimulation that comes from the business, which I divide into two. There's the kind of cerebral stimulation, so sort of problem solving, building stuff, the creative enjoyment that you get from that.
Yeah.
And then I think there's the other element, which is being proud of building a product that people genuinely love. And there's awards and recognitions for it and stuff like that. We recently won the prize from MCN, who's the most respected motorcycle news reviewer, and they rated our bike as the best electric motorbike in the world.
Wow,
that's amazing.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. But actually, just seeing people really enjoy it, going on the Facebook owners forum and seeing people share photos of the bikes, that really fills me with pride. And seeing the bikes roll off the production line. So there's the kind of creative and cerebral fulfillment, but then there's the kind of sense of I am building something that people really love. I think that's awesome.
Has the journey of starting Maeving shifted your mindset and viewpoint to what entrepreneurism is and starting a business is? Like from when you're back at university, what's changed?
Yeah, hugely. I always used to say to everyone very flippantly, you should start a business.
Yeah.
It's just the best thing in the world. It's this is right at the beginning of my journey.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, don't do it. And I don't mean that I suppose I just mean most people are not suited for it.
Yeah.
And there's this really over romanticized view of the founder CEO journey that does not, because you've got all these books that showcase the unicorn stories, and what they don't show is the hundreds of thousands of businesses that failed.
Yeah.
And not only failed, but broke down relationships and left people destitute and all that.
Yeah.
And it's really important to make sure that people are going into it for the right reasons. So, for example, I now think the most important things that you'll need as an entrepreneur is like self-belief, resilience, passion for what you do.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. Not, if you're going into it for money, for glory, because you think it's just going to make a quick buck, because you think you're going to exit in 5 years, all of that absolute rubbish. It will take its pound of flesh, and you'll only make it through if you're doing it for the right reasons and you're resilient. And so I have a healthily jaded view of the founder journey that's led me to. And the great thing is that if you are an entrepreneur and you do want to start a business, you'll ignore everything I'm saying right now because you just will do it.
Yeah.
So I only want to weed out the people who are maybe doing it for the wrong reasons or are thinking of it slightly flippantly as like, oh, maybe I'll go into a corporate career, maybe I'll start my own business.
Of course.
That's not, you're not, it's like film. If you want to be an actor, you have to be like, I am going to be the best actor in the world. You have to throw yourself into it. You have to go to every casting call. You know what I mean? Or a writer. If you want to be a journalist, there are careers where you can't just be like, oh, I think I'll be a writer. No, there's a million Oxford grads who are snapping up positions for free, working for, you just.
It's funny. I had a conversation yesterday with another old Radleyan who we were talking about this idea of so many people have these dreams, but you see them and they go, I really want to be this. And then a year later, they've done nothing to actually make it happen. And it's like people almost say something to feel like it's like validation for them. They're thinking of doing this. But it's those action takers are the only ones that actually ever get anything. That you have to be willing to take small steps. And they said, don't be scared of failure. Don't worry about what people think when you go and do it. I mean, when I started the podcast, I remember thinking, God, my friends are going to think I'm fucking weird because I've never interviewed anyone in my life. Exactly. And then you just do it, and you do it for the sake of doing it because it's for you.
And then suddenly you're on episode 200 and you're like, oh, I'm a podcaster.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think also, actually, one other thing I would say that's really important is I would really encourage budding entrepreneurs to really think about the scale of the business that they want to start.
Okay.
I think people don't think enough about quite how different it's going to be running a small one-shop t-shirt printing business from running the sorts of businesses that books are written about.
Of course.
Tesla.
Yeah.
One is going to be maybe manageable and fulfilling on a kind of day-to-day, and the other is going to be absolutely, it's going to be a nightmare and you may make it, but you'd be 1 in a million.
Yeah.
So I think if I was to start a business again, the first thing I would do would be to sort of think about the scope of that business and to set guardrails around how much time that kind of thing.
What about let's go for, let's say, boys and girls leaving school, going to university. What would your advice be for them? Maybe thinking about what to study how to plan? Would you say go and get the corporate job and then find a person, like find your co-founder, or like,
Yeah.
what's your kind of like advice in there? Because if someone feels like they can't sit behind a
we're
computer.
lucky because we don't have a kind of vocational studying system. You can study anything and then do it. You know, you don't. In Germany, you sort of study what you're going to. You do that, and then you do an MA, then you do a PhD, and then you go into the career that you've been building for 12 years. And that's not the case in the UK. So I wouldn't really comment on the degree.
Okay.
I would say do as many internships and do as many. Just try, speak to as many people from as many industries as you can to start to whittle out the things you don't want to do. I definitely would recommend to anyone doing what we did in terms of doing a bit of corporate first, or doing a bit of I just think learning how to use email, speak to people, just basic stuff is a good confidence booster. You'll also then become disillusioned with it if it's a good thing to tick off and go, yeah, no, don't want to do the corporate thing, or don't want to do this, that, or the other. Get it out your system. I really think finding good co-founders is
vital,
absolutely essential.
Okay.
Because I just wouldn't want to do it alone. I think having just
That's really interesting. I'm trying to start this drinks company at the moment, and I'm doing it on my own. And it's like I am very open to finding a co-founder, but it's like, where do you begin? Because you've got people who might do. When we originally started the idea, I was with someone who wanted to do a vodka company, and it evolved, and then we went in different ways because I had a different idea for what I wanted. And it's very interesting knowing that. And I do agree with you. You need someone there to push you further as well and to work with. But if you've built the vision up in your head of what you kind of want it to be and feel like, it's then hard to bring someone into that and let go of some things. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And I've got no experience with that, so I can't really comment on it. And yeah, I mean, when you put it like that, it does. How the hell would you trust someone with this thing? It's a big gamble, and I don't know. I do not know. I don't know anything about finding a co-founder like that. Because my whole thing was premised on having already started one.
Yeah, of course.
All I can say is that sharing the load emotionally and the decision-making responsibility and having a good sounding board, you'd think, oh, but I'll just hire a good FD and I'll, but they're not going to be as, the good thing about having a co-founder where you're in, almost 50-50 is that they are in it in theory in the way that you are. They've got as much skin in the game that, they're going to be up there on those late nights. And you just can't ask the same thing of a well incentivized, second in command kind of relationship.
There's that saying,
it's not the same vibe.
Yeah, and no one cares about your business as much as you do.
Yeah, they just don't. They absolutely don't. And so that kind of equity split and that co-founder, there's just something different about that.
No, I get that.
But I've got no experience with finding co-founders or how you do manage a kind of unequal equity split in a world in which you're like, well, I'm the main guy, but co-founder.
No, I understand that.
Low level.
I understand that. Okay, final two questions. What are the keys to succeeding and following your dreams?
Amnesia and resilience. I think if anyone, I'm obviously talking when you say follow your dreams, I'm talking about the founding of the shop here. I think if anyone was to tell you in all its detail, warts and all, what would be involved in the process, you wouldn't start. And so you need to be someone who can shoulder it and forget about most of the pain and just keep going. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this work. I think that's it. Yeah. And that's partly why I generally warn people against in interviews when my co-founder and I are interviewing people to join the company, we spend about half the time convincing them not to take the role. We go, do you know what this is going to entail? Like, do you know what you're getting in for? Like, why startups? Like, what's your idea of what a startup's going to be like? Yeah. I mean, we're not really a startup anymore, but you know what I mean?
Understand,
And the idea being that if they answer all those questions well and they still want to join at the end of it, great. Yeah. And so that's why I say to people, don't be an entrepreneur. It's because you're just trying to weed out the people who don't have those qualities.
Yeah, interesting. When you say amnesia, it reminds me always of the Federer quote. I think it was towards the end of his career, and he talked about how everybody remembers his wins and his good shots, but no one remembers all the bad shots he made. And it's like 10,000 points he lost compared to 3,000.
And the games where he lost in straight sets, and he was baffled, as everyone else was.
Yeah, it's very true, and it is that the ability to not be affected by the things which don't go well is so important.
100%.
Yeah. Final question, and I don't know if you have kids yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so what's your one lesson you want to teach your future children about life and happiness?
Oh, the one that my parents gave me, which is I genuinely don't care who you want to be and what you want to do in this world, but try. But being passionate about something is gonna it's gonna make you happy and fulfilled, and it's going to mean that you set off on the right path to do the right thing that works for you. And so I think it's that. I just want to put zero pressure on my kids in terms of what that might be, but just to encourage them to get out there and have a kind of zest for life and find that passion.
I love that. Seb, thank you so much for coming on the Valley of Outlaws. Great first episode for Series 6. And the journey, the story, your mindset's so interesting. And I know it will be so inspiring for so many people. So I really appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Valley of Outlaws podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and follow us on Spotify and YouTube.